What's up guys, Thomas from FJ6 Speed Factory, and today we're installing the brand new Faction Fab coilovers. So Faction Fab has come out with two different coilovers. They're both very affordable. They have the F spec and the FR spec. The F spec has a few features stripped out. It's a little more bare bones, so it's even more affordable. So let's go through the specs. This does not come with camber plates up front, and you get 7K springs, which is a little bit softer than this one, but it's gonna be more for street driving. You can do some spirited driving, but this one's really just a street coilover. And both of them are fully adjustable in height. And you get a 1.9 inch drop in front for the F specs with a 2.3 inch drop in the rear. Those are max settings, you always go a little bit higher. Now moving over to the FR spec, you do get some more features like camber plates up front, so you get some negative camber adjustment in the front. You get stiffer springs, 10K springs front and rear, then you have a max drop of 1.9 inches front and rear with the FR specs. These are the ones we're gonna be installing on our car, so let's go ahead and go through the preload settings. That's what you have to do when you get them out of the box. So currently this coilover has no preload on the spring. It just moves about. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna like hand tighten the preload first. Get all the slop out of the spring. There we go, no slop. Then we're gonna bring the second collar right up against it. Now we're gonna tighten this top one 4 millimeters, which is the width of these collar wrenches. Oh yeah, perfect. Then we're just gonna lock these down. For the ride height adjustment, you can set it to whatever you want, but we're going for the lowest setting, so that's gonna be a 10 mil gap right here. So we're gonna have to move this collar up and this whole collar thing up. And it's gonna be a 10 mil gap, so I'm using a 10 mil Allen just to make this thing super easy, so I don't have to get a ruler out. Slide this up. Bloop. Just gonna twist this till it's tight. 10 mils, yep. Okay, now let's just tighten this down. Boom, we're done. This is set at the lowest setting with the correct preload. All right, now the first step to installing this, we're gonna break the lug nuts loose on all the wheels. We're gonna lift the car up, so that'd be a jack stand, some jack stands for you. We got this awesome lift, so that's what we're gonna use. Then we're gonna take the wheels off. So now that we've got access to the wheel well, the first things we're gonna disconnect are gonna be the bolt that holds on the brake line, and then we're also gonna be disconnecting the ABS wire. Next, we have these two 19 millimeter bolts to undo. Now with those two 19 millimeter bolts out of the way, you can just let this wheel hub assembly just dangle. And next we're gonna be removing this sway bar end link. And I like to use an impact wrench just so the nut doesn't start spinning on that bolt. Alrighty. Now if you're having troubles getting the sway bar end link off, especially if you've already installed one side and now you're taking the stock side off the other side, and if you're going for super low, so meaning like the distance between the sway bar end link on one side is like really different on the other, so there's gonna be a lot of tension. So what you can do to kind of relieve that tension and make sure you can get that end link out is to drop down the coilover you've already installed. Then it makes it a lot easier to slip out that sway bar end link. So kind of a helpful tip if you're in a bind and you can't get that out. Now next up, we're gonna open up the hood, and then we're gonna be taking out the 3 nuts that hold on the top hat. So they are a 12 mil nut, and we're gonna be taking 2 of them off, and then the last one we're gonna leave the last few threads off, so this thing doesn't drop and fall on the ground. All right, so now that I have just 1 nut left, I'm gonna have one hand underneath holding the coilover. Then I'm gonna undo this last nut, and then we can gently feed it through the fender well. All right, there we go. Old one's out. Now usually an impact will run fast enough to spin this nut on without spinning the ball joint inside of this end link. But since it's not working for us, we're gonna be using a 6mm Allen and a 17mm wrench to tighten this on. Now the top bolt is going to be your eccentric bolt. The normal bolt's going to be on the bottom, the eccentric bolt's going to be on the top, and this, as you rotate it, will slowly increase or decrease the amount of camber. So you want to rotate this to where it's all the way in, giving you the most negative camber if you want the most negative camber, which you should usually. And once it has the most negative camber, then you can tighten it down. So now all the bolts are on the front coilover, so we're gonna go ahead and move on to the rear. And the first thing we need to do for the rear is gonna be lowering down the lower control arm so we have access to the coilover. Now in Faction Fab's install instructions, they tell you to take this one out along with these, but I find it easier to leave this one in and hinge from this side and let it down. It's a little bit easier getting this thing back on. So these are this is a 17, that's a 17, this one I believe is a 14, and that is a 10mm. So we're gonna be taking these 4 bolts off, and we're gonna hinge this thing down. Now all the other bolts are out except for this one. This one's holding in the coilover in the bottom because there's 2 more nuts that hold it on the top inside the trunk. So we're gonna leave this on, undo those. This is gonna keep the coilover from falling over and hitting the ground once you release the 2 from the top. And then underneath the trunk, behind the carpeting, are gonna be 2 14mm nuts that you're gonna have to undo. Now we can pull that bottom bolt out. Then we can lower the lower control arm. There we go. And our coilover slides out. Now the easiest way to put the rear coilover in is to thread the nuts on the top and have a friend in the trunk ready to thread those in while you feed it through the hole. Now that the coilovers are installed, let's go ahead and go over the torque specs. Starting up front with the top hats, those need to be 14.5 foot-pounds. All these are actually going to be measured in foot-pounds. The lower mount nuts, those are the big 19mm bolts, those need to be torqued down to 129 foot-pounds. The brake line bracket, that needs to be torqued down to 23.6 foot-pounds. And then for the rear coilovers, the top hats, those need to be down to 22.1 foot-pounds. That's very specific. Then we have the outer control arm and the bolt that goes at the bottom of the coilover. Those are both going to be 88.5 foot-pounds. Then the tie rod end link, that needs to be torqued down to 33.2 foot-pounds. So now let's go ahead and put the wheels back on and drop this thing and see how it looks. So if you guys want to pick up or you're interested in knowing more specs about these Faction Fab coilovers, you can head over to the website. We're actually doing a 10% off code right now for a limited time. So use code FF10 to get 10% off these already affordable coilovers. So yeah, that's pretty rad. Now, if you guys have any tips that you want to share with the community about how to install your coilovers, maybe faster or easier, go ahead and write those in the comment section below. And that's all I got for you guys. Links are gonna be in the description as always, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Now the easiest way to put the new wheel coilover, you get slightly softer springs. You get 10K or 7K balls, 2 different versions of these coilovers. We both balls.